Well, welcome to episode 3 of Everybody Leads with Jeff Capusta. My name is Aaron, and we're discussing everyday leadership for everyday people. And today we're telling Wheaties to move over because there is a new breakfast of champions.
A new breakfast of champions. That's exactly right. I see where you're going with that. Yes.
Love the quote by Ken Blanchard. He says that feedback is the breakfast of champions. And so today we're going to be talking about giving and receiving feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you throwing out the Ken Blanchard quote. And since you quoted, I'm going to one-up your quote by quoting the Bible. The Bible says in Proverbs 19, verse 20, it says, "Listen to advice and accept discipline, and at the end you'll be counted among the wise." And if you think about it, advice, discipline, that's feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to growing our leadership, because the idea is that everybody leads, whether you are the president, CEO of an organization, whether you are a mom or a dad, whether you're captain of the team, or maybe you're just leading yourself, everybody leads.
Yeah.
And feedback is something that's free. I mean, think about it. It costs nothing, yet how often do we avoid feedback?
Yeah.
And so what I realize is that for a lot of us, giving feedback is challenging. Receiving feedback can be painful.
Yeah.
And so if we can learn to give and receive feedback, we can grow in our giftings, our skills, our abilities. I think about, for my own self, there's 3 major hindrances to feedback. There's ignorance. There's, I didn't know I needed feedback. Sometimes we think that we're good at something.
Everything's good, yeah.
But people see things that we don't see.
Yeah.
There is assumptions. It's easy to assume that someone's going to give me feedback, when in reality, everybody's so busy doing what they're doing, they're not thinking about giving feedback.
And
then
so you don't request it, and then
then
miss
there's
the opportunity.
There's insecurity, and it's like sometimes I don't want feedback. If you've ever done something and you last thing you want to do is go and ask somebody for feedback. It's like, it hurts. It's vulnerable sometimes. And so if we can learn to give it, to receive it, I think healthy cultures are cultures of feedback. So we'll talk about how to get better at it.
Yeah, and I think most of the time you said insecurity. I mean, if you're struggling with something or you're not very good at it, I think so it's going to make you less likely to ask someone, "Hey, how am I doing in this area?" But it's necessary.
Absolutely. Well, feedback, think about it. Feedback can be constructive or destructive. So feedback is either something that's going to build you up and make you better, or it's going to tear you down.
Yeah.
It should be, I think, healthy feedback. It comes in the form of positive and negative. And so if you think about it, if the only time you get feedback is when you do something wrong, you probably don't want feedback.
Yeah, you're not going to seek it. Yeah.
You're not going to ask for it. If somebody says, "Hey, I'd love to get together with you and talk about that thing that you did," you're instantly going to go to all the things that could have gone wrong. But feedback should also be, "Let me tell you some things you did really well. You did incredible. You spoke at this event, or that meal you prepared, or the race you were in. Man, you did amazing." And so people need to understand that feedback is positive and it's negative.
Yeah, nothing makes you feel better than when someone gives you some praise for something that you did or something you accomplished. Yeah.
Exactly. So giving feedback. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about giving feedback. So a couple things I like to think about when it comes to feedback. And there's several questions that I just run through in my own head. And the first is this, when giving feedback: is it helpful or hurtful? Like, am I going to tell you something that you need to hear so that I can help you, make you better, or because I just want to take a jab at you? I want to just tell you, "Hey, I didn't think you did a very good job," and then turn around and walk away. Like, that's not helpful to anybody.
Is that something that's happened before?
No, never. Never. But
hopefully not something we put into practice.
Well, but let's talk about that for a moment. So in our context, all right, lead pastor of Lifepoint Church. You're my assistant.
Yep.
You're also on our speaking team. You do a lot of hosting, which means you're in front of people. You do a lot of organizing of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's times when we're operating in situations where it's like, okay, how did I do?
How was that?
How can I make that better? And so if all I did was say, "Hey, your announcements were horrible. That's probably the worst I've ever heard," that's not very helpful, nor is that going to make you look forward to feedback in the future.
Well, all right, fine. I won't do it then.
So is it helpful or hurtful?
Yeah.
Is it honest? Is it honest? That's a good one. So for me, let me just be vulnerable here. This is something I got to work on. The guys that are close to me, that work close to me, know that sarcasm is one of the ways I will tell you something that I need to tell you without telling you the thing that I need to tell you. So for those of you that know me, little insight into me is if I say something sarcastic to you, behind every sarcasm is like a little bit of truth.
A hint of truth, yeah.
And so I'm working at being more upfront with feedback rather than making a joke out of something, but really secretly hiding it. And so I think feedback should be honest. I think we should also, when giving honest feedback, we should avoid some people call it the crap sandwich. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to tell you something really good and then something, constructive and then something really good. Whereas if you've been around any kind of leadership culture for a while and somebody's come in and be like, hey man, I just want you you're doing such a good job.
Yeah, they say,
first of all.
Yeah.
And then it's like, just hit me with it, man. Just shoot straight.
Yeah.
Be honest.
I want you to know I love you first.
Yeah. So,
Now-
so when we give feedback, we want it to be helpful. We want it to be honest.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're giving feedback, like if emotions are high, sometimes we're not telling people, in an honest manner what they need to hear. So
Yeah.
we need to make sure that we're tempered there. The third is it kind? Feedback should be kind. Feedback should never be malicious. It should be full of grace and truth.
Yeah.
Should be, here's some things you're doing great, and here's some things you can get better at, because we can all do that. Is it tactful? I found that good feedback at the wrong moment or in the wrong tone doesn't accomplish
doesn't yield the desired
goal.
results, that's
So
for sure.
It should be tactful. Is it on time? Again, I just referenced this, but the right feedback at the wrong time is not helpful. So if I come walking off stage and somebody instantly hits me with feedback, what they're telling me may be critical, it may be necessary. I'm not ready to receive it yet.
Yeah. And in that moment, emotions are high. I'm going to borrow something that they say from Alcoholics Anonymous. They say, when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, halt.
Good.
And so I think the same thing. Don't offer feedback when any of those apply. That's another thing, because emotions run high, and you just want to tell someone right away whether or not they did something that you were expecting or not.
Exactly. So then the last question is this, and is it thorough? So the feedback I'm giving, is it thorough? And here's why I think I added this in, is oftentimes in an organizational setting, you might do quarterly reviews or annual reviews, or you may review an event that was put on in your organization. And it's really easy to sit down, and if you're sharing multiple things with somebody that need improvement, there comes a moment where you kind of feel like they've had enough. It's like, I feel like we've been going through, it's like, and here's another thing that needs improvement, and here's another thought. And if I'm not thorough, if I don't write down what I need to say, I'm liable to tell you 2, maybe 3 things of criticism and giving you feedback. And there may be 2 others. And what I've learned is if I'm going to give you feedback, I might as well be thorough. Don't leave something out.
Well, that's all I've got bandwidth for today. Yeah.
Well, it does nobody any good to come back and say, well, 2 months ago when I was telling you this, I also was thinking this.
Yeah.
No, you need to be able to give good feedback, and it should be thorough. And so giving feedback is something I think that we can all get better at, whether it's in our organizations, even in our homes. I mean, if you think about it as families, there's opportunities for feedback all the time.
Yeah.
But when was the last time that somebody, your spouse sat down and just said, hey, I need to give you a little bit of feedback? It doesn't usually sound good, and oftentimes doesn't really go very well.
Yeah, and you would think receiving feedback would be the hard thing. Like, how am I doing a good job? But I think often people actually withhold feedback because it's hard. They don't want to hurt someone's feelings.
Exactly.
And so that's a difficult thing as well. And I think people, they have an opinion about something or the way something went, and they don't share it just because they feel like they're going to hurt feelings. So,
well, if I don't care about you, then I don't care to give you feedback.
yeah.
If I care about you and I see potential in you, then I don't want you to settle. I want to continue to pull that out of you. I want to make you better. So as parents with our kids, we sit down and we give them feedback. But think about it. Most of the time as a parent, and I've got 3 of them, and you've got Ava, you've got 1.
Yeah.
When your kid brings home grades and they bring the report card home, your eyes almost instinctively fall to the lowest grade. And it's like, hey, let's talk about this C right here. What happened in science class? You're like, well, look at the A's and the B's. And so it's normal for us to look at the areas that need improvement But we also need to remember that we need to give feedback that's positive as well. And so finding those strengths, praising those, and then I believe that gives you the right to be able to speak into those other areas as well. But we do that as parents. I know for me, I've got 3 kids, like I just said, and my youngest, he races mountain bikes. And so he'll finish a race sometimes, and I can tell whether he gave it his all in that race, or whether he didn't. He hadn't been training very hard. He didn't hydrate. He didn't work real hard, and I've got to give him feedback. And it would be easy to just, hey, great job, bud, and move along.
Yeah.
But those are teachable moments, and we've got to learn to capture those. And so if we're going to lead and begin to lead even ourselves, we've got to learn to give feedback, but also how to receive feedback. And that's kind of the second half of the equation.
So along the same lines as what you were just sharing about, if you love someone, you'll provide feedback. The same thing. What about people who give feedback that don't love you? Let's say like critics, haters. What's your advice for people that are receiving feedback from unsolicited avenues?
Well, so that kind of moves us into the second half of this idea of feedback. All right, so we all need to learn, how do I get better at giving, but how do I get better at receiving that kind of feedback? And so let me jump to what you're asking about. So I would say that when feedback comes your way, you need to consider the source. You've got to consider the source.
Good.
Like, this person that's giving feedback, are they my boss? Okay, if they're my boss, then yes, I need to listen to that feedback. I need to apply it.
Yeah.
I would say, do they know me? So if this person is looking and maybe they're trying to give me feedback on being a dad, like, okay, do they even have kids? Are their kids worth, do I want my kids to look like their kids? Are they the kind of dad I want to be like? And so I need to consider that.
Yeah, everybody's got parenting advice.
From a pastor standpoint, we've certainly received our share of feedback over time for us as an organization. And I have to ask the question, do they understand the vision? Do they understand that Lifepoint exists to point people to life in Jesus, that we're about reaching those who are not yet in church? And if they don't understand that, then I now can process their feedback through that lens.
Yeah.
And they may mean well, but they don't understand why we do what they do. Another thing is, do they care about me? So like, people will say stuff that is painful if they don't care about you.
Yeah.
But if I know that someone cares about me, someone is invested in my life, well, it makes sense to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Does this person, back to the organization, do they understand or do they serve your organization? If they do, they're invested. Now, some folks are just negative all the time, and there's some people, like I love the internet and I love Facebook, but everybody has a voice.
Yeah.
Which means everybody can lob things in your direction. Everybody can write a review. Everybody can be negative.
Yeah.
And you have to just take that stuff with a grain of salt.
They can and they do. Yeah.
They do. They will. They are.
And so I'll never understand why people who have, they sit at home and they've never built anything, why they continue to criticize the work of other people like, they're experts in the field or something.
That's a great point. I think of Levi Lusko said in his book, I Declare War, he said, don't be surprised when you're trying to do something great and people take a bite out of you. He said, that's the only bite of greatness they'll ever have.
Oh.
And truth be told, there's a lot of times I just want to look at someone and be like, how about you go build something and then come back and talk to me? Like, sweat a little bit, work a little bit, give a little bit, help. And
so what about that? Like, for people listening, if you get a review online, how to respond? How to respond?
So you're saying that as if I've had a negative, I don't know, let's just say there was a 2-star review or something.
Hypothetically speaking.
You need to know who you are and what you're called to do.
Yeah.
Now listen, don't let that inflate your view of self to where you're like above anybody's feedback. I think you've got to consider the source. You got to chew the meat. You got to spit out the bones. There are some people that you don't need to read your own feedback. Like, I am not going to Google myself. I am not going to Google Lifepoint Church. I know that for the thousands of people that love us, there is a handful that don't. And if I'm not careful, I will listen to the feedback of the critics and the negative. And the next time I go out to preach, I'm going to preach to those people as if they're sitting there.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah.
And so I know for me, one thing that's really helpful, not everybody has this luxury, but I have you. And so you process a lot of that negative feedback. And And if it's something that has, that there's truth to it, it needs to be passed on to me and the organization. If not, I don't even need to know that it exists.
Yeah.
And so for some folks, they just need to like delete.
Yeah.
Don't dwell on it.
Most of the time it's like, thank you, have a blessed day. You just take the ammo right out of their gun, because what they're looking for is a fight. They're looking for a fight. And so, if we just, all right, thanks for your feedback. Take care.
Have a good one.
That's like the last thing they want to hear.
Absolutely.
So,
So receiving feedback. So you got to consider the source. You need to seek it. I think you need to ask for it. We don't typically like to ask for feedback, but we need to ask for it before, during, after. We need to be proactive about feedback. I like to say you either seek feedback or feedback will seek you.
That's good.
And so look for it. If you're working on a big project for your boss, don't invest, months developing this project only to sit down and show your boss. And he's like, well, that wasn't what I had in mind at all. So as you're working on it, get that clarity on the front end. I think good leaders seek feedback after they do something. I think great leaders seek it on the front end.
Oh, that's good.
Hey, listen, I want to make sure I'm doing what you said.
Yeah.
I want to make sure the calendar looks like what you wanted. I want to make sure that we're on the same page. Get that feedback on the front end.
Yeah.
So consider the source, ask for it. Another thing when it comes to receiving feedback is that a little humility goes a long way. I know for me, when you come to me or someone comes to me with some feedback to make me better, the first thing I want to do is explain why I did what I did. Oh, you don't understand. Let me. No. Just receive now. Receive. Don't defend. Just receive. Take it in. Little bit of humility.
Yeah.
You're going to be wiser for it. That's what the Bible says. The next would be to ask for clarity. So what do you mean when you said the music didn't sound good? What do you mean when you said...
Yeah, it's a little vague, yeah.
Right. So my wife has got the challenge of, she is the primary food prep in our house. I mean, if I fix any food, it's meat on the grill, and I'm pretty good at it. But she's, always trying new recipes. And sometimes you throw that down in front of the kids and they look at it and their faces kind of give you a little bit of feedback, and they poke at it, they eat a little bit, and then they act like they're not really hungry and didn't care for it.
It wasn't good.
It wasn't good. Well, there's your feedback. So it's not enough to say, I didn't like it. Well, what didn't you like about it?
Yeah.
Give me a little feedback
Yeah.
so that I can get better. And I think asking for that clarity. And then the last thing I'll share on receiving feedback is ask for solutions. So clarity on, tell me exactly what you didn't like. Okay, what can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Next time, yeah.
How do we get better? How do we improve? How do we make sure that if my performance was subpar, how do I make sure it doesn't, the next time I get a review, it's not subpar? And so I think all of these are things. I mean, if you think about it, feedback is free. It doesn't cost us anything. It will only make us better. But it's so uncomfortable. We've got to get to where we are comfortable seeking it, receiving it, and even giving it. And I know that that's a whole lot easier said than done. I know folks listen to this. Some of you love confrontation. You're like, oh man, I love confrontation. I love stepping into that. I don't.
Yeah.
I hate it. If I have to have a tough conversation and give you constructive criticism and feedback, you need to know I agonized over that. I thought of every way to avoid this conversation.
Played out the conversation in your head over and over and over.
I played it out. I played it out to where if we wind up in a fist fight over this, how I'm going to win. And I'll fight dirty if I have to. I will lay in bed. I will lay in bed thinking about that. I loathe it. But I know that the only way that I'm going to get better, and if I genuinely want you on the team and I care about you, then we have got to learn to talk about it. And that's true in every area of life.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person where if you put me in an environment, I understand my role as a leader at the church, but I also have absolutely zero problem being a follower and part of a team. And so I have to make sure that when I see things that I think can get better, that I look for opportunities to say, hey, here's just a thought. I've done this from the role of a coach, and I don't like it because I feel like I'm critiquing someone else's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
But if I genuinely care, and I really do feel like this is something I'm supposed to be a part of, then it should be better because I'm there.
Yeah.
And when somebody comes to me with that, I got to be willing to swallow that pride and accept that somebody else might know how to do things better than me. And so that can be true from the mountain bike team that I help coach. That can be true at the gym. I mean, we're both gym rats.
Yeah.
So when somebody says, hey, fix this in your lift, you want to be like,
what do you know?
Yeah, what do you I can out squat you. I can't out squat you, but sometimes it's tough. You feel like people they're kind of tearing you apart, and that's not
clearly
always true.
They can see things that you can't, right? We've got blind spots both at the gym and in our leadership. And so obviously we talked about it last podcast, but outside insight,
Exactly.
So
and why not, if there are people in your life that genuinely care about you, parents, for instance, spouse, even your own kids, like, why would you not sit down and just say, how are we doing? How am I? You were telling me you were out with Ava, with your daughter, and tell about that for just a minute. I thought this was great.
Well, I was just, been parenting for a while. I wouldn't call myself the best dad in the world, but I'm trying to be a good one. And so I just asked her, I said, hey, how am I doing as a dad? I said, I know that I don't always get it right. And so I just want to know, what are some things that we could do that would improve, my parenting of you.
And did she give you feedback?
She did. She did. So she gave me 3 answers. She had points and everything. Give
them to us.
Yeah. So she just said, 1, more snuggle time. And I'm like, all right,
done.
We can do that one.
I can promise you my kids do not respond with more snuggle time. So take that while you can.
I think she was just trying to play to dad's emotions in that moment. Number 2 was more daddy-daughter dates. And so I'm like, all right, we can work on that one as well. That's great. And then number 3 was don't yell as much. I was like, okay, yeah, we'll work on that one as well. But it's humbling to hear, the opinions of your kids. If you ask them, they'll tell you.
And you will be better for it.
Yeah.
You won't yell around the office quite as much. And so I appreciate her bringing that up.
As if that's something I'm doing.
Well, that's for another podcast. But there it is. It's giving and receiving feedback. It's free. It will make you better. It will make you humble. But I think it will improve in our families. And there's something that is said to a boss when somebody that works for them comes and says, hey, listen, I'd love to know how I can do my job better. Because I promise you, your boss sees areas, but maybe they're so busy doing their own thing that if you come and say, hey, I'd love a little bit of time just to get some feedback on how I've been doing. What do you think? It's going to make you better. It's going to raise you up as a leader. It's going to give you more opportunities. And I think everyone, the family, the team, the organization will be better for it.
Yeah, we say that all the time. I lead a team of guys that serve with you on Sunday. And so I tell them all the time, one of the kind of the core values of the team is to ask and ask often. Just say, how'd this go? What do you think of this? That sort of thing. But timing is everything, just like you referred to earlier.
Feedback.
So, yeah.
The breakfast of champions.
Okay. Any other thoughts on feedback?
Well, there's so much you could say, but we laid it all out right there. Feedback. That's it. Nope.
All right.
No more feedback on feedback.
Well, great. As this podcast is still kind of new, just want to invite you guys to share this with your friends.
Give us some feedback.
Exactly. Leave a review. Give us some feedback. Make it constructive. Hopefully it's helpful and not hurtful. And
tactful, truthful, on time.
And if you like what you're hearing, subscribe to the podcast. We look forward to giving you more content.
See you next month.